I want to give you a really simple 3-step tool on how to process your emotions, any emotional discomfort. I'm Diane. I'm a clinical psychologist. If you're new here, feel free to say hi, introduce yourself in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. If you haven't checked out my previous video on why it's important to stop pushing emotional discomfort away, then go and watch that and then come back here. So it's really important to not try to resolve our emotional discomfort too quickly, because we tend to do that in ways that are counterproductive and ways that end up keeping us stuck instead of moving forward. In this video, I want to talk about a caveat to that, because obviously the long-term goal is to relieve the emotional discomfort that comes with depression, anxiety, panic attacks, physical symptoms, whatever it is that you're struggling with. The long-term goal is to get you to a point where we relieve that emotional discomfort. But the how we go about doing that, the process, can either keep us stuck and move us further away from our goal, or it can move us forward towards that goal. It's a really paradoxical idea and took me a while to get my head around the concept that if you want to resolve your emotional discomfort, stop trying to resolve it too quickly. You have to engage with it before you can resolve it. Otherwise, we end up pushing it down and it just festers and becomes toxic and comes out in other ways later on. So go and watch the first video and then come back here. I want to make this really clear-cut and simple, because I think it is clear-cut and simple. Simple doesn't mean easy. This is really difficult to put into practice because most of us have to unlearn a few things before we can learn these steps and strategies. But the more you practice, the easier it becomes, and you'll get this wrong 100 times before you get it right. That's okay too. Go easy on yourself with the process, but this is how it goes. So the first thing that happens, step number 1, is a problem comes up. And that can look like a whole bunch of different things. That can look like somebody said something to me which just didn't sit so well with me and created a whole lot of uncomfortable feelings for me. It can be I'm having a really hard time in my work environment, or I'm really struggling with a lot of conflict in my relationship. Whatever the trigger point is, that doesn't matter so much. That's the content. We're talking about the process. That's the how. How do you respond to that? So step number 1, problem comes up. Now, what most of us do in response to that is we skip over to step number 3 that sits over here. And that is logic and reason kicks in. So we take emotional discomfort and we try to resolve it for ourselves. So we might say things to ourselves like, don't overreact, or maybe they didn't mean what I think they did. And we will try to put that into perspective for ourselves and try to resolve the emotional discomfort. The problem with this is that emotions don't operate according to the rules of logic. And my saying for this is you cannot logic emotion. You cannot take logic and reason and apply it to emotional discomfort. It doesn't work. There's a reason for that, because we're skipping a step. And so what you have to learn, and I talked about this in my first video, is pausing. Push the pause button when that emotional discomfort comes. Stop trying to preoccupy yourself. Stop trying to distract yourself. Stop trying to make it go away prematurely. You have to do this in sequence. Otherwise, you get more stuck. So step number 2, the thing that we need to introduce, is the arena of emotional processing. So problem comes up, process your emotions, and then use logic and reason to make meaning and to resolve it. But it has to be in that sequence. So what I mean by step number 2, and this is where the practice comes in, is when you feel the emotional discomfort and you try to apply logic and reason to it, pause. Engage that emotion. So emotional processing has 2 steps. Number 1 is we have to engage, validate, acknowledge, express. That's step number 1. Number 2 is we have to make meaning. But you have to engage the emotion. And sometimes really simply what that looks like is, can you name it? When I feel that emotional discomfort, I'm not trying to resolve it yet. I'm sitting with it. I'm connecting with that emotion and I'm validating it for myself. I can't emphasize the importance of validating your emotional experiences. So how I feel is not right or wrong. It's not good or bad. It's not discomfort that I need to get rid of because I perceive it to be bad. It's valid. That's all. Unjudgmental, it's valid. Don't criticize yourself, validate it for yourself. When we do that, there is something very powerful that happens in the brain. So your brain has two parts. There is a part of your brain that holds emotion. It's the emotional arena. There is a part of your brain that holds logic and reason. Physiologically, those two parts of the brain cannot be activated at the same time. And so what we want to see is a sequence of, I have emotional discomfort. That's number one that comes up. Number two, I'm in the emotional arena because I'm already feeling emotionally dysregulated. So instead of trying to push it away and flicking the switch to go into the logical arena, I'm going to spend some time in this emotional arena and not be afraid of my emotions and not be afraid to confront and not buy into the voice of fear, because it feels really scary to engage with your emotions. But I'm going to go there and I'm going to name how I feel. I'm going to validate it for myself. And I'm going to listen to what my emotions are trying to tell me. Once you do that, when you go into that emotional arena and you validate it and you put your response in context, what we do is we flick the switch in our brains. We flick from being really emotionally dysregulated to logic and reason. It will naturally switch on. Your capacity for problem solving is naturally hardwired into your brain, and it will naturally be switched on after you've processed that emotion. Because if we switch it on, if we jump to logic and reason before we've processed our emotions, we end up with unfinished business. We end up with unprocessed emotions. We end up with baggage. We end up getting depressed. We end up getting anxious. These are the ones that I'm using as examples because they tend to be the most common things that we get stuck in, but there is a whole array of mental health difficulties that people get stuck in because of this really simple, not easy process. So go and practice this. Go and practice pausing your logic and reason. And for people who are really good problem solvers, this is incredibly difficult because every instinct inside of you is to problem solve. And you are really efficient at problem solving in other areas of your life. And it's probably the thing that makes you really effective in the workplace. But this is a completely different context. So keep doing that in certain contexts where it's working for you. The emotional arena is where it becomes dysfunctional. And so we want to learn some different skills here. So go and practice. Number one, problem comes up. Number two, pause. I'm not going to jump to logic and problem solving too quickly. I'm going to process these emotions. I'm going to name them, validate them, put them into context for myself. Step number three is then logic and reason. That's how we make meaning. That's the second half of emotional processing. Is let's look at the context. Let's flesh this out. Was what was done or said, was the thing that's upset me or that I'm stuck in a reflection of me? Was it personal? Does it mean that I am inadequate? Does it mean that this person doesn't care about me? Or could there possibly be some more factors that come into play in the context? Practice this. Come back and let me know in the comments how you got on with it, how easy you're finding it, if you're finding it helpful, if you have any questions for anything that you would like me to expand. And I will see you in my next video.